right. It is Thursday night. You know what that means? Real Monsters. I'm your host, S.K. Barrett, and joining me tonight, as always, the lovely and talented Wess Haubrich.
Hello, hello, hello. I'm in my van address, ready to flip some letters around.
Just careful what you're flipping.
Ew, right? Yes, I will be.
So, tonight, we are revisiting a topic we did in one of the first weeks of Real Monsters. And the reason we're revisiting it is because it's a honest to God lost episode. We lost three or four of the early episodes, and
Bit
Ted's
of a learning curve.
yeah, a little bit of a learning curve. It was a platform issue, and we weren't covering our asses well enough. And by we, I mean me.
It's because
and
I'm tech dumb, though. I am a total technological idiot with that thing.
it's not any different than any other piece of software. But here's the thing. Ted is just too good to let go. He can't be lost.
Is that infatuation? Well, I called it a channeling in a Facebook post. That's probably pretty accurate with how SK is going to be tonight, so
Here,
we will
let's
get to it.
should we show that graphic?
Of course.
Thanks to Becky for creating this. Um, I don't know what it means.
I
I
am
mean,
not seeing. Oh, there we go. The Transfiguration. Two scary Washington guys.
yeah, listen, one of the things, one of the reasons we did this show originally. I mean, besides that Ted is one of the motivators behind the title of this show, is that, I have a connection to this guy, a couple of them. And so we'll get into that.
Absolutely.
But first,
Dun dun dun.
um, this week in crime history. And this week we have crime history being made.
We do, as of right now. I suppose we could do that first. The Kyoto arson attack at Kyoto Animation Studios in Japan. Final count as of right now is 33 dead in the fire, 36 injured. They're not saying how many of them are injured gravely, so likely be watching for that 33 figure to be revised up.
Wow.
We'll definitely be watching that. Um, but to look at the story here a bit, because it's actually connected in what we're going to be looking at next week in a few different ways. But um, the arsonist was apparently not an employee of Kyoto Animation.
Okay.
The guy just walked in to this building with, they said, around 72 people in it and poured an unknown accelerant all over while yelling, "Die," and then flicked a lighter and all hell broke loose. But
So, how. I'm a little puzzled, I admit, to how so many people would have died in this fire. I mean,
he apparently blockaded the front door somehow,
okay.
and a lot of them took off towards the roof, which was
Oh,
ultimately a
no, bad,
futile
bad, bad. Do not
way
go
to
up in a
escape.
fire. Do not go up in a fire. Because guess where fire goes?
Yeah,
Up.
exactly. But apparently they found about 20 of them on like the third floor of the building, and
Oh,
then like 11 at another, and then they found one in a stairwell, all dead. But the police also collected a number of what they were just saying was sharp knives around.
Hmm.
And they didn't know if this belonged to the arsonist, though.
Okay.
Let's see, early reports were saying that a witness saw the arsonist being approached by the police. Real bad burns down his arms and his legs, and he was rambling. The verbiage they used was angrily complaining, but this speaks to motive. I literally just got this email as we were going on the air. They think they have a solid motive. Let me get back to that paragraph here. This is from the Hollywood Reporter.
Okay.
The arsonist was heard telling police as he was arrested that the studio had copied his ideas, while a local newspaper reported that he shouted that his novel had been stolen.
Hmm.
Let's see. According to local news reports, the arsonist, who used large quantities of gasoline, so they know that now too, to set fire to the 3-story concrete building, appears to believe the studio stolen his ideas. The suspect burned himself while igniting the fire and ran away from the building badly injured. He rang the doorbell of an elderly woman's house nearby, only to collapse in the street before she could answer. On seeing the badly burned and shoeless suspect, she hosed him down with water. When police arrived soon afterward, they confirmed the man's identity from his driver's license. They're still not releasing the name, and asked him why he had done what he did. They copied my ideas, he was overheard by bystanders telling the police in an agitated manner. The suspect was also heard shouting, "They stole my novel, that's why I lit the fire," according to the Kyoto Shimbun newspaper's Friday morning edition.
Hmm.
A bit of background, Kyoto Animation has run a competition for novels and manga,
Okay.
known as the Kyoto Animation Awards since 2009, via which writers had the chance for their stories to be turned into anime series and films. However, there is no evidence yet that the man submitted an entry or is even a writer. Preliminary investigations by the police have uncovered no links between the suspect, who has yet to be named, in the animation studio. He is reported to be in serious condition with burns in the hospital, and they have been unable to question him thoroughly. So, be looking for more on that. But
Wow.
to put those figures into a bit of perspective, the last, really the only major terror attack that Japan had in its history
Yeah.
was in 1995, where the death cult Aum Shinrikyo released sarin gas on the Tokyo subway.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
It only well, that sounds bad, but it only killed 12 right then and there, and then one died later on from the complications.
And they were all
So
in the
you're
same car, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So you're looking at damn near triple
Yeah.
the body count of the worst terrorist attack in Japan's history, which I think you could arguably call this terror too, with what it accomplished. Um, Although,
Well,
another.
with what it accomplished, but what's the intent? I mean, obviously the ricin attack was intended to be terror, right?
True, true. What you were saying there with intent, that had a question that I was researching at work earlier today.
Yeah.
And if this guy was pissed, why didn't he go in and shoot the place up? What
Right.
was the question I was looking at? I didn't realize that Japan is this heavily regulated over both firearms, swords, and knives.
Oh, really?
They are very, very sternly regulated where damn near nobody can own them.
Huh.
So, yeah, that was just something that, yeah, but
Well,
the la-
he's already surpassed the number of victims from our subject uh, tonight.
he has,
Not by
which
much, but by a couple.
which we'll be getting to that in just a minute. But the
Which,
last terror attack that was actually in Japan
yeah.
was this year, January 1, where a guy ran one person over and injured 9. And get this, it was to protest the execution of the Shinrikyo leader
Oh, really?
and 12 followers. Yep,
So it was connected.
it was.
We
Well,
should
that
talk
terror
about those.
attack
We should
was.
talk about that, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, we'll be getting into that next week when we look at Shinrikyo.
On our second episode of Death Cults.
Yes, second one. Well, and it's going to be approaching our third one too.
Yes.
Early August with Manson. So,
Yep.
but yeah, he had a couple of historical items too. Not a whole lot, but
Okay.
a couple things of interest. This day in crime history, July 12th, 1963, Myra Hindley and Ian Brady kidnap, rape, and kill Pauline Reed, age 16, their first victim, first in the Moors murder series.
Oh, the
5 victims
Moors.
over 2 years. Yep, in
Yeah,
Manchester.
right. The one of the other serial killer couples in England in the
Yeah.
70s.
Oh yeah, that's when Fred and Rose West, right?
Yeah, same kind of. I don't think they quite overlapped, but very close.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Interesting. But yeah, July 13th, 1966, Richard Speck robs, rapes, and kills 8 student nurses in Chicago. The other student who recognized the bodies could only recognize one. There was that
Whoa.
much blood.
Jeez.
One survivor of it too. And the sight of the bodies, this really got me, made a hardened Chicago crime beat reporter vomit twice.
Wow.
Yeah, that says a lot. I mean, Chicago has been the murder capital for, since Capone. They've dealt with that kind of crime, but let's see. July 16th, 1994. Moses Sithole. I had never heard of this guy. South Africa's worst serial killer. Kills his first. Maria Monene Monama, 18. This guy, 38 plus women, raped, strangled over a year and 5 months.
Wow.
Yeah, and on top of it, he would often call the victims' families and
What?
taunt them. Yeah,
Oh, that's mean. I mean,
yeah,
geez, that's just piling on.
it's horrible. Man, and let's see, July 17th, 1934. Tony Mancini charged with the second Brighton trunk murder. Have you ever heard of this?
Yes.
I thought it was so interesting. I was reading about that.
Yes, yes, the body parts shipped on the rail lines in England.
Yep. They thought the two different murders were related because it was both dismembered women put into a trunk and shipped.
Yeah.
But it turns out they weren't related.
How can they not be related? You mean not family related, but the crimes are not related? That's just too
The
bizarre.
crimes were unrelated. It was
That's
two
just,
different killers
that's just too
working
bizarre.
independently. Yeah. It is so weird. I don't know if that was a popular method back then.
For a couple of guys.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
they would literally stuff a body into a trunk, put it on the rail line, pay for shipping across the country, and then never pick it up.
wow.
It just
Man, I
sit
was
there.
just thinking of our 1930s serial killers. Peter Curtin comes to mind. But wow. Yeah, I'm going to have to read more into that than what I did. Dang.
Yeah,
That
it's
is
pretty wild.
it is amazing. That is all I have history-wise.
Yes, Kelly Evans in the chat. We'll talk
Oh, what?
about goddamn Lizzie Borden one of these days. All right, all right, all right, all right. And you can be on to help us out.
Absolutely. Yeah, Japan's not a gun culture, but apparently they're not much of a knife and sword culture anymore either, if the law is to be believed,
Yeah.
which I found kind of bizarre, but dang.
All right. All right. So this is
Good old Ted.
Ted. Let me tell you something. Um,
Tell
this
us.
this man single-handedly altered the mindsets and the behaviors of at least three regions of the country.
It is true. I think he has got to be the most geographically wide serial killer in American history.
Quite possibly, but the thing that I want to point out about it is that um, behaviors changed because of Ted. Attitudes changed because of Ted.
Hmm. Wow.
Um,
I
you
was
know,
just thinking with that geography question there, he
yeah,
was arguably even wider than the Midwestern Axeman, Velisca.
yeah, yeah,
I think he would even be wider than the guy who some believe killed with an axe over the rails in the South too.
right,
There was a separate murderer. They believed went from I think it was California to maybe South Carolina. I'd have to take another look at that one, but he's separate from the Velisca axe
right,
murderer.
right.
But yeah, that's the thing. There was mass media when we're talking about Bundy too.
Yes, yes. So, Theodore Bundy, um, by all accounts, so he was a he was not adopted, I would say, but he had his mother was, I think, divorced and then remarried.
Hmm.
Um, by all accounts, he had a absolutely dead on normal childhood.
Born in Vermont, wasn't he?
Yes, yes, and
And
then
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 moved to
then moved to
Tacoma.
Tacoma. Yes, yes, and uh, there's zero indication that he experienced abuse at the hands of anybody. Um, so there's no laying that um, as an excuse. Um, yeah,
You,
Kelly, you're right. He did kind of create the celebrity status of the serial killer, which is
you know,
it's just really weird. I
he
gotta say.
did. He absolutely did. And I was just thinking there's actually a couple other killers around that same time who also had a fairly normal childhood. And oddly enough, Dahmer is one of them.
Really, I would
Yeah,
not have
no abuse with
suspected
him
that.
either. I wouldn't have either because he has one of the weirder pathologies, but yeah,
Um,
maybe that's more normal than we know with serial killers.
yeah, I have a book that makes a connection between serial killers, and this is, and they're very clear that this is not a universal thing, but there is a common, although not universal, set of circumstances for many serial killers, including childhood abuse and head trauma.
I think I had read that somewhere too.
Um,
Wasn't it what area of the brain did they say?
no, it didn't. It didn't have to be specific.
Oh, just non-specific head
Yeah.
trauma. Huh. I'll be
Um,
darned.
but that's not Ted.
Not at
Now,
all.
and nobody's ever come forward to say that he, experimented with torturing animals. Um,
Mm-mm.
he, but he has been suspected of murdering a neighbor girl.
In 1961, wasn't it? I think I put a picture of her in.
Yeah, we have pictures. Anne Marie.
Emery. Indeed.
Anne
I
Marie
wonder.
Burr.
I
And
would be curious. I wonder if he wet the bed.
you know, his mother has been pretty tight-lipped.
Oh,
She,
really?
yeah, I mean, she has come out and said, a couple of things about, she didn't want people thinking that, the family had that it was a terrible house or that kind of thing, and because it wasn't. Um,
Um, Patty asks, "Wet the bed?" Yeah, that is actually part of the triad of sociopathy that we were talking about briefly with hurting animals, wetting the bed, and then fire starting.
right.
That they say is a predictor of a serial killer.
Whew, only had two of those, and I'm not saying which ones.
The, that's the McDonald triad, the technical
Yes,
name, I
right.
think. Yeah, but also known as the triad of sociopathy.
So let me pull up the map that'll show. Here is um, the map showing the proximity of the Bundy house versus the Burr house. And apparently, um, Ted was known to the family and known to Anne Marie. And Ted was 12, I think,
I think so.
something like that.
I'll take a look while we're digging deeper.
So this girl in August 31st, 1969, vanished
Okay.
vanished from her bedroom one night and was never seen again.
Which maybe, well, I guess we could get into that later. I was just thinking how easy that would be. And concealing a body, it's something we often joke about in terms of the Pacific Northwest and just how easy that would be.
Yeah, let's see a wider map. Um, so here you see um, the little 14th and Sheridan circle is Ted's house, and it's actually within that circle are both homes of Anne Marie and Ted. And notice this just to the north, this green belt, this large green belt that I've circled.
Oh, wait, 1969, he would have been 23. Bundy born
No.
November 24th, 1946.
Wow, do I have that wrong? I must,
well,
I think
I was
I must have that date wrong.
yeah, I was thinking it was 1961.
Yeah,
Let me do a little
yeah,
bit of
yeah, yeah,
digging.
yeah. I think I got it wrong. I think I typed it in wrong. It
That
was
would
on
have
my
made him
list.
15.
Ah, man.
Ian Marie. Yeah, 1961. 14.
So he would have been
Yep.
14. All right. Um, he could have, uh, yeah. So there was no disturbance in the house. There were none of the windows or doors were jimmied open. There was no forced entry. Nothing broken. Nothing disturbed. The girl never cried out. She didn't fight back or anything. She just vanished from her bedroom. The parents, just down the hall, didn't never heard anything. There were, I think, a couple of footprints in a flower bed outside the girl's window, and that was the only clue the police ever had.
Yep. That
Um,
shows one hell of an early aptitude if it was him.
yeah, never proven. He never admitted to it. The I guess the only reason that he's a suspect is because he was 5 blocks away.
Yeah.
and he knew him.
I was just thinking with that, in terms of aptitude with crime, that's
Yeah.
something that we could also get into later, because when when he goes on his cross country killing, as it were, it's kind of a distilled form of criminal versatility, where you have to literally be good at damn near everything to get as far as he did. You have
Hmm.
to be good at all these different types of crime:
Yeah.
escape, robbery, breaking and entering, and murder on top of it. But
And deceit. I mean, in the
oh
sense of
yeah,
like conning people.
yes, oh
Right.
exactly, and that's the thing that you do see, especially with the highly intelligent serial killers, which to me Bundy's kind of the top of that pyramid.
He's pretty well
With
up
ones
there.
we
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, that's something that's very common with them. Is they're very criminally versatile.
Right.
They can do a lot of crimes without getting caught.
Well, yeah, because they're, um, sociopaths like Bundy. And one of the other things that Bundy exemplifies is the way that a sociopath has to learn to mimic normal social behaviors.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Um,
definitely. Like we've
and
talked about before, with some of them even practicing and mimicking in a mirror to get it right.
absolutely. In my house, it was not unusual to have members of the family practicing in front of the mirror, practicing performances in front of the mirror, but it was for the stage, not for how do
Yeah,
you interact with friends.
yeah, yeah. Well, there you go. It's same skills, different translation,
Yeah.
basically.
By the way, we have a number of uh, very creepy Bundy quotes, and I'm going to start with one here.
Oh, I have one too. When you get through with yours, there.
I'm going to bring this one up because it relates. I didn't know what made people want to be friends. I didn't know what made people attractive to one another. I didn't know what underlay social interactions.
Wow. And you don't get much more bold-faced sociopathy than that.
Right.
Dang.
He didn't get it, but he could see it. He could see the outward manifestations and the outward behaviors, and he could try to mimic those.
Wow. Dang. Well, the one that I had was from the Crime Classification Manual, a standard system for investigating and classifying violent crimes by the eminent profilers John E. Douglas, Annie Burgess, Alan G. Burgess, and Robert Ressler. On page 54,
Yeah?
preceding the morning of his date of execution, the notorious serial killer Ted Bundy told FBI Special Agent Bill Hagmaier, "If you want to catch the big fish, you must be willing to go under and into the deep water to catch them." Bundy proceeded to tell Hagmaier that he would take him under with him.
Hmm.
And that was before they got into that whole, interviewing,
Right.
right when he was literally at death's door on death row. But
There was one more I wanted to. What did I call that one? Oh, yeah. Here. This one is kind of the essence of this show. Society wants to believe it can identify evil people or bad or harmful people, but it's not practical. There are no stereotypes.
yep, it is the essence of this show.
All right.
Zero stereotypes.
So maybe, maybe Mr. Bundy killed Anne Marie. We're not going to likely know in this lifetime.
Nope. That case is going to stay cold, most likely.
What we do know is that there, um, he killed four women. He killed two women he claimed to have killed in 1969, two women in Atlantic City. Those women were never identified. He claims to have killed a woman in Seattle around 1972. He confessed to that. Unknown woman.
Interesting.
He also, another woman in Tumwater, Washington, he confessed to killing, and also in 1972. Um, but things really get going in 1974. In January, um, a young woman named Karen Sparks um, goes missing. Oh no, she didn't go missing. Oh right, Karen Sparks. She got beat up,
She did. She was the one
and
who
she
survived
survived.
it.
She survived with permanent injuries,
Neurological, wasn't it? Neurological
physical
injuries?
and mental uh,
Okay.
disabilities, permanent. Yes. Um,
Before we get too much further there, we
yeah.
were talking about attempts. And the profilers in that same classification manual have a bit to say about that because there's actually a lot of confusion in the law enforcement community about what should be reported in terms of attempted homicides.
Hmm.
So they say on page 77, reporting of attempted homicides is important for two reasons. First, attempted homicides can be instrumental to the solution of a series of murders, and a record of the attempt should be forwarded to VICAP database, Violent Offender Criminal Apprehension Program at the FBI.
Interesting.
Um, let's see. They wrote that Harris, Thomas, Fisher, and Hirsch noted that medicine is more successful than ever before in treating victims of violent crime and saving their lives. They wrote that between 1960 and 99, the fraction of criminal assaults resulting in death dropped by 70%. In other words, it is not that offender did not try hard enough to kill the victim, it is simply that the victim would not die or that medical attention saved him or her. And second, the reporting of attempted homicides is important because not everyone who comes into the sphere of control of a killer is killed.
Right.
Survivors can provide police with invaluable information, of course, that cuts their violent career short. For police, the difficulty comes in associating the correct attempted murder out of a set of many possible attempts with the correct series of homicides. And that was actually pretty well illustrated by when we get to Lake Sammamish with Bundy.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Um, yeah. So let's pull Karen's. Let's go back to Karen Sparks now, right? So
Yep.
she was 18 years old in January of 1974. She was attacked by Bundy and um, severely beaten, but she survived.
In
Um,
her apartment at the college there, right?
right,
Okay.
right.
Make sure I was remembering that correctly.
Oh shit!
What?
We gotta mention the trigger,
Oh, yeah. Diane.
Diane. See, these co-eds going missing in 1974. By the way, he was very busy in 1974. Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 women in 1974. that he attacked,
Dang.
14 of whom he killed.
Wow.
What
He
made him go explode like this?
I hate to blame the woman, but she kind of factored in with it. Not her
Well, it's
fault,
not her
but
fault. Obviously, no, not her fault. But she was the
archetype, as
she
it were.
yeah, she set the archetype for him. And so who are we talking about?
It was Diane, his girlfriend. She
Diane.
was, I
Yeah,
can't remember the last name and I don't have it written down, but she was from California
right.
and came up there to study in Seattle, and that's actually where he met her.
At the University of Washington.
Hmm.
And she was from a successful family, and she was doing, some really important things um, at school. You know, I think she was going to law school or medical school. I can't remember. Um, uh,
Yeah, somewhere there, but when he was
yeah,
studying psychology and working on the political campaigns too up there,
he worked
that's
on a
when he
couple.
met her.
He worked on uh, political campaigns for I think Governor Dan Evans, and he served on a committee. Get this, he served on a committee that was to study and make um, legislative recommendations for uh, victims of sexual assault. And
He did.
from this, he learned about all the problems that interagency communications had, all of the breakdowns, all the problems that jurisdictions had sharing information.
He learned a shitload of statistics from that too.
He learned a lot of statistics, and he learned that if things get hot in one jurisdiction, move because they don't fucking talk to each other.
This is a huge part of the reason that the FBI later came up with VICAP, by the way, that I mentioned, the Violent Offender Criminal Apprehension Program, to where they could get
Yes,
all that
yes,
information in one place and centralized. But it wasn't around that. You barely even had the term serial killer in the popular consciousness. Well, you didn't in
right.
'74.
It wasn't even a word yet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that wasn't coming till later.
yeah. So
So
so Bundy he made friends. He was interested in becoming a social climber. He liked he liked he really was in love, as much as a sociopath can be, with Diane. All right, damn it, I'm gonna have to look up her full name.
well, and you know what else is interesting about Diane with these later killings? And this has kind of wormed its way into the cultural consciousness, but the killer who kills a woman with a particular part in her hair, that was Bundy
Yeah,
from Diane.
Diane Edwards.
There we go. I wish I could have found my notes. I'm going a lot off my brain and then my books right here. So,
Paul in the comments says that it sounds like Bundy was an extremely intelligent man. He was actually very intelligent. He was accepted into 2 law schools. Um, he fooled a lot of very smart people along the way, um, in the sense of fooling them about his nature. Um, uh, he was
absolutely.
he was very smart. He was not good at sticking with school. His hobby got in the way.
Well, there was that, and then with the law schools, when he decided to do that, his LSAT score wasn't all that great. And that's not necessarily knocking his intelligence. There's so many intelligent people out there who are just shitty test takers for one reason or another. But
Right.
That was actually the reason that he settled on the Puget Sound Law School, was because his LSAT wasn't where he wanted it to be. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, he's still, a super intelligent guy. And let's see, Infrafan, yes, he did have a kid, and we'll be getting to that a little bit later.
So, all right. So in 1974, right in January, uh, co-eds start disappearing right the fuck off of the campus at the University of Washington. Uh, you know, uh, the classic example actually is Linda and Healy, um,
Um,
who, yeah,
mhm. Oh, I was just going to ask before we get too much further into that,
yeah.
if we could get an idea of how big that campus is. Just a rough
Ooh,
idea.
let me
Doesn't have to be exact, but
let me see. Let me see.
being as I've never been to Seattle and I'm not familiar with the area like you are, obviously, I just thought that might be good to know.
Let me see if it shows up. Yeah, I don't have the map, but I can.
And
Let me.
Paul, you were saying about a made-for-TV movie. There was one called The Deliberate Stranger out in 1986. I'll post a link in the chat for you. Here you go, Paul.
All right. So I think.
And yes, Puget Sound Law School is where he ended up going.
Yeah, University of Puget Sound. All right, I can do this. So if we go to.
I got you off your train of thought. I'll look it up. I'll look up the
No,
size, and you
here
keep
we go.
going.
Here we go. I just pulled the window up here.
I didn't want to get you off your train of thought here.
So here you can see, the university is bounded by water to the south and the east, and I-5 to the west. Um, it's a good sized campus. Plus, there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of to the especially to the west and north, a lot of off-campus housing. Um, literally for blocks and blocks and blocks. The whole area here get, excuse me, is almost entirely students and faculty.
25,118 undergraduates in 1974 in the
Yeah.
winter quarter. I'm getting that from actually their bulletin, I guess, is online. Washington.edu.
All right. Let's turn that little guy off.
Diane, oh, lovely Diane. I guess she was sort of a cosmopolitan California.
Yeah, she was a very popular girl, very beautiful girl, from a successful family with a great future, and they were boyfriend and girlfriend for a while, and he kind of wanted to marry her. He and part of the reason was is that, he was a climber. Or at least he wanted to be a social climber, and she
Absolutely.
was a way to do that. And we don't have a lot of explanation why, but they did break up.
They did, and that was kind of accompanied by a bit of a downward spiral for him, too,
Right.
in other ways where I don't know if he failed at school or if he just decided that it wasn't worth his attention anymore at law school.
Yeah, he did do he started missing a lot of classes and a lot of tests, and he kind of was on the verge of um, failing law school at UPS.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Dang.
and then and that's when all these women started disappearing, who were um, literally uh, archetypes of Diane.
Yep. He's fulfilling that obsessive drive.
Linda Ann Healy, the second woman, was walking home from a party at an apartment complex and going 2 blocks to her own apartment and disappeared. She was 19 years old, um,
Mm.
and she just vanished. Um, and um, Ted used a ruse. This is where he started this um,
Using a cast.
no, it wasn't a cast this time.
Oh, okay.
Um, but it was some kind. It was a ruse to, I think, asking directions or something like that, just to get her to stop and talk.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and then he um, got her. Oh, I think in this case he had pretended to have car trouble
Oh, okay.
with his Volkswagen, this famous beige VW Beetle.
So
And
this was all still before Lake Sammamish.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, this is the winter before. So
Okay.
so he spent all that winter, perfecting, if you will, his abduction skills. And Linda Ann Healy her remains were eventually discovered on Taylor Mountain, along with one, two, three, four, five, six others.
Wow. That was the spot that he would go back and visit too, wasn't it?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and then there followed several others. He did go down to Evergreen State College one time, and abducted and murdered a, a girl there, Donna Gale Manson, and then went. So he was traveling at this time, right? He went to Eastern Washington and
That's Evergreen State.
Evergreen State is down by Olympia.
Okay.
He went to Washington State campus over in Eastern Washington, abducted and murdered um, Susan Ellen Rancourt, and 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 then into Corvallis, Oregon, and then in Burien, he abducted. Burien, by the way, is was my stomping grounds growing up.
Mm.
Brenda Carroll
Wow.
Ball, and he abducted her outside of a bar.
Man.
And and then um, back in Seattle, took another co-ed in June, and then we get to Issaquah, Sammamish State Park.
Yep. That's where they were talking about again the reported homicides and then him not killing all his victims, but it was in mid-July where he was hunting around Lake Sammamish. This is where he used to cast on his left arm, approaching the young women. In this case, Janice Ott was the first, um,
Yes.
asking if she could walk with him to his car. and
to
she
help him
did that.
load his sailboat.
That's it. And she
Now,
declined actually to get into his car and walked away
Janice
from
Ott
Bundy.
did no,
Uh,
no.
yeah, I'm
So
looking at the wrong one
no,
there.
Janice Ott did not, but one girl did decline.
Yeah,
Yes,
that was the one that walked away. She's unnamed in here.
yeah, one girl did decline. Janice Ott um, was
Picked up at Sammamish.
picked up at Lake Sammamish State Park, which is if all the trees magically disappeared from where I'm sitting right now, I could
Huh.
see that spot.
Oh, wow. Then Denise Nasland as well.
And on the same day,
Yep.
so he abducts and murders Janice Ott, then and he takes her up to Taylor Mountain. Then he returns to the exact same place and takes Denise Nasland, who was
It,
19.
it's interesting. They have a section in here, and I was just going to touch on this because I had never heard the name. Robert Yates of Spokane, Washington. Does
What?
that ring a bell? Killed 13 women in 2000.
What about him?
Oh, it was under that section about Bundy at Sammamish. They had this Robert Yates in there too. I had just never heard
Why?
of him.
Why was he in there?
I think it would have to do with a victim escaping. They're
Oh,
using him as an example. He was just another Washington killer I had never
yes,
heard
yes.
of.
I do remember him a little bit. Yeah,
Dang.
The Spokane guy. Yeah.
Hmm.
So what's crazy about this is um, I was at the park.
Wow.
Um, I was at a we had a I was 14 and no, is that right? 74?
Yeah, 74, July.
Yeah, I was like 15. I was 15. And we had a Boy Scout camp out there, and we camped overnight. And I had a yellow rubber raft that I was paddling around the lake. So I wasn't actually in the where people were laying out on the beach and stuff at the park,
Mm-hmm.
but I was there. And
Wow.
one of the reasons I remember it so clearly, obviously it made the news, but one of the things that came out was that, they were looking for a guy named Ted who drove this beige Volkswagen. And one of my best buddies at the time was named Ted, and his family had a beige Volkswagen. And we gave him a whole raft of shit about it, until we
Dang.
realized how serious things were.
And he was being brought in by a dragnet later on, I
No,
would assume.
he was also 15.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but that's another thing. That color of Volkswagen was very, very common.
Very common. Volkswagen's Beetles were all over the place. You
I'm
did not,
trying to remember the number of killers who drove that. I thought it was a really weird number. I'm gonna look that
probably,
up while we're talking.
but you didn't want to play slug a bug because man,
No,
you'd get a really bruised up shoulder. Um,
yeah, wasn't there something going on at Sammamish that day? Like a
pro-
festival or
yeah,
something?
yeah, there was some kind of what was it? I can't remember what it was. What a music thing? I think it was. I think it
Oh,
was.
okay.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It was the local radio station, KJR Radio, had a little event, party going on at the park. And so it was very busy and very crowded, and a lot of kids there. Um,
Hmm.
and so, a guy. One of the things that um, allowed Bundy to do what he did is because, he's a good-looking guy.
Oh, absolutely.
Uh,
That
uh,
that
and that
unquestionably aided his movement among people. Eh,
absolutely, and it aided him in gaining the temporary confidence of these young ladies.
Oh, absolutely. To where, unlike, say, Ridgway, he wouldn't have to hunt among prostitutes and the destitute and
Right. Yeah,
those that wouldn't be missed.
Ridgway had kind of had to. He didn't have
Yep.
the option of, you know, trying to pick up teenage girls.
Oh, exactly. Because he was not the best looking guy, but he was also very awkward.
He's very awkward, not especially bright. Uh, but Bundy was a smooth talker, man, and he was a good-looking guy, and he could sell his pitch to these girls and get them to want to help him,
Yep.
and
Yep.
then they would pay for it. Um, so that, you know, those two girls disappearing on the same day, um, right out of out from under the noses of friends, on top of this string of murdered, well, they didn't know they were murdered, but vanished co-eds. It changed the mentality of the entire region. Um, you know, uh, people didn't hitchhike. People locked doors when they hadn't locked doors. They didn't, it just everything changed because of this guy. People were
Yep.
suspicious and you know, not so easy to talk to. it it was really profound, the impact he had.
Oh, definitely. And I'm sure when we get to the other geographic spots he hit too, it was very similar.
So one of the um, he had something else going on at the same time as he was
Uh,
these girls were disappearing, and
mm-hmm.
but he had a new girlfriend, didn't he?
Oh, I missed that. He did?
Elizabeth.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I recall now.
He had
He
this
did.
he had this new girlfriend who had a daughter, I think it was. And
Yes, this is different from the kid that we mentioned
right.
earlier
This is
when
not
somebody asked a question about it.
right. This is not Ted's daughter. This was Elizabeth already had a daughter when they met, and they started dating. In fact, got excuse me, Ted even proposed at one point.
Wow.
Um,
You, in a lot of ways, he was kind of a hopeless romantic that just happened to like killing people.
yeah, he, the problem is this sociopaths have a hard time remembering to do all the things in a relationship that just normal people don't have to think about.
I was going to say they probably have a hell of a hard time with rejection too, with certain people.
Sure. What's interesting about Elizabeth, she's not in the mold of Diane.
It is interesting. It almost makes you wonder whether he thought, I need to consciously get away from that, or unconsciously.
Yeah, it's difficult to say. The recent Bundy movie, What was the name of that? Uh,
Extremely vile and shockingly evil, or extremely
yeah,
evil, shockingly vile.
yeah. So
Zac Efron.
that movie was actually told from her perspective.
I still need to watch that. Damn it.
It's quite well done, and it takes a while to really understand that it's really as much as anything is her story.
Hmm.
And so about this time, so Ted has dropped out of law school in Tacoma, and she,
Extremely wicked, shockingly evil, and vile.
yeah.
That's it. Yep.
Well, Kelly, yes, she does. No, this is a different hair part than what Diane had. So Diane's part was off to the side, and Elizabeth's here is, down the middle. So it's a little bit different. Uh, Elizabeth didn't have the elegance that Diane had. Elizabeth was a much more simple type of a person. She was working, I think, for the University of Washington
Yeah.
at the time. Um, I mean, she was quite a bright woman and capable. Uh,
Real salt of the earth mountain folk.
yeah, that
Yeah.
more like that
No.
than a uh,
Refined California socialite.
yeah, not a socialite. Yeah, so there's a lot of very significant differences between Elizabeth and Diane, which probably saved her life. Honest to God.
Oh yeah, definitely. You
Um,
don't want that tendency to murder the hair part coming back.
yeah.
If he did manage to suppress it, even temporarily.
And by all accounts, Ted was treated her daughter pretty well. There was never any indication that anything untoward ever happened. Not even anger or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't think he would be the type. Bundy, for the killers we've looked at, Bundy is very controlled, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
there is one very shocking um, diversion from that we'll get to when we get to Florida. Actually,
Oh yeah. Yes. Yes. That is
oh, Kelly says an error occurred.
I'm not seeing.
Okay, I guess we're good. It's that darn Canadian internet.
It's the conversion rate.
Probably.
It's
Yeah, what
it's
is
the
it for every American megabyte? That's like what, 1,000? What have you?
Canadian.
Or no, I'm thinking of peso in terms of internet. Sorry, Kelly. Canadian bitrate conversion. There you go. Uh, yeah, in Elizabeth. Had to log out and log back in again.
So Bundy's feeling the heat because he's been a very bad boy and very active. I mean, his cooling off period has been, hold on, let's see. He's got like uh 2 to 3 week, you know 3 to 4 weeks here and there. He doesn't go more than a month. He hasn't gone more than a month in 1974 without killing somebody.
Yeah?
Um, and then he goes and kills two women on the same goddamn day. And the news and the police and the TV, the radio is just going nuts over these murders.
Pure pandemonium in the Pacific Northwest.
And he is feeling and because of the way he operated at the state park, They know his name is Ted. They have a sketch. They know what his car looks like. The heat is turning up high, high, high on this guy. So what does he do?
Flees to Utah, doesn't he?
Yeah, he applies to the University of Utah Law School and gets in.
Plenty of friggin' Mormons to hunt.
And they take him right on in.
They do. And he starts actually mixing in those social circles in Utah.
Yes,
He
because
never full on converts, though. At
oh
least I
yes he
didn't think
did.
he did. Oh,
Yes
he
he
did
he
convert.
did.
Okay. Interesting.
He did. He joined the Mormon church and he got them all thinking he's the great guy. He's such a super nice guy. He's a cool dude. And he fooled them all. Um,
Just like up there in Washington, man, with the political campaigns, the suicide hotline he worked on, and
yep.
everything.
Well, he doesn't waste a lot of time. He actually stops in Pocatello, Idaho, on his way to Utah and murders a hitchhiker, and nobody knows who it was.
Wow. It's a totally unidentified then.
Completely unidentified. Nobody knows who she was or and she's never been found.
Wow. It's kind of interesting that he didn't admit what he knew with that before being executed.
Um, you know,
Or did he?
there's there I don't think he did. And the first woman he kills in Utah a month later, he took all the way down to Capitol Reef National Park. He
Wow.
he kidnapped her from south of Salt Lake City at a town called Holiday, and took her all the way south to Capitol Reef Park. But that's all as close as anybody was. You know, was never able to give enough information for her to be found.
Hmm.
Nancy
Very
Wolkoff,
interesting.
and she was
Yeah,
just
the manual again says on that with the unidentified dead,
yeah.
matters involving unidentified dead persons can be thought of as the mirror image of a missing persons case. It is very difficult to begin the homicide investigation of an, they're calling it oh, I read it wrong. Unidentified victim. I thought it said unintended for some reason.
Oh,
The body recovery site of an unidentified victim may suggest its connection to a multiple murderer, just like Bundy. He kidnapped two women in one day, killed them both in the same location, which we just talked about.
Kelly asks, did he have a pattern to his killings, a tell, something he did that was only his?
Do you mean an MO or a signature, Kelly? I'm looking up the definition here as we speak so I can get what the experts say.
He definitely had the pattern of his victims,
Oh,
but
the hair part would be a big part of that.
yeah, the hair was definitely. Um, yeah, Paul, we'll talk about that execution. That was, in fact, a very big deal. Um, Kelly says signature. Um,
Signature or calling card, yeah?
yeah, he strangled. I don't know that there was anything. I don't know that there was anything especially unique, except for the fact that he really liked to. He did not have a long cooling off period. Um,
Now, the way that they define signature here in the manual again, it's an individualized set of indicators that can point specifically to an offender's personality. In the case of multiple crimes committed by the same or serial offender, there's often repeated personation. I think the closest thing there with the signature would be the Diane archetype again.
Yeah. He also was quite violent in his killings. Um, as in, he didn't just strangle them. He often um, beat them to death. Like in Florida, he used a log, for example.
Hmm. Which was interesting with that. It is actually one of the only times with a killer this smart that you see them degenerate from an organized type into a disorganized type.
Yeah,
Was Florida,
yeah.
but I could talk a bit more about that when we get to it.
In Utah, we have let's see. Uh, we have Nancy Wilcox in October, Melissa Ann Smith in October. By the way, um, these first three women that he murdered in Utah, teenagers, four, five women, five, they're all 18 to 16 years old, 16 to 17 and 18 years old. So guess what? He killed children.
I wonder if the reason for that was maybe he wasn't feeling as comfortable there yet. So he
Um,
goes for a victim that's going to be easier to control. I don't know.
yeah, it's possible. It's possible that, um, he was not, by the way, he was not hunting on campus at this time. He was going to surrounding communities, um, typically
Fact that,
south of Salt Lake City.
mm-hmm, yep. Yeah, they're easy targets, definitely. But then there's also another thing I find fascinating about that is the ego thrill with it. Because you know what? A teenager is going to be more readily missed in this sort of area that we're talking about. This isn't going to be
Very much.
runaways. This is going to be
No,
a more affluent area where
absolutely.
it's going to be noticed if they're gone.
Well, and in fact, one of his victims was the daughter of a local police chief.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And if you don't think that got things cooking, um,
Mm
but then there was the case of Carol DeRanche, who was he approached at a mall on November 8th, 1974, and said, "Hey, um, we think somebody broke into your car." He pretended to be a policeman and said, "We think somebody broke into your car. Can you come out and check it out?"
hmm. Mm
And
hmm.
she was immediately suspicious. And then she went out there and he goes, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with the car," but he persists and says, "Well, can you we got a guy at the police station. Can you come and make a statement or something like this?" And and she's very much hesitant to do that. And he goes, "You can ride with me." And then he's tries to get her into his fucking Volkswagen as a police car, and she's
Oh.
like, "What?" But even still, she's suspicious as hell, and his story just really isn't adding up in her mind. And yet she still fucking gets in the car, and they start driving off. And one of the things that he would do, we know because of her, is he would handcuff the women in the passenger seat. And he started to handcuff her, and guess what she did? She fought back.
Yep.
To the point where he had to pull over and stop the car, and she fought like a motherfucker, and she got out of the car, and he got out of the car, and they started wrestling outside of the car, and another car approached and spooked him, and she got away and got in this other car and got away. And she was just 18 at the time.
And Kelly asks which victim this was. It's Carol Duranch.
Carol Duranch from
I
Murray, Utah.
How do you spell her last name? I don't think I'm typing it right.
Daronch.
Thank you.
I should have said Carol.
uh, yeah, I mean, it's definitely, you're just talking a bit in the chat there about consequences with all this. I mean, it's definitely something that it's intended to stroke their ego in huge part. It's
Well,
literally a look how damn good I am, is what they're saying.
Bundy was a huge narcissist.
Yep,
He absolutely thought he was smarter than everybody else.
absolutely. And that's
Um,
what he is saying, especially loudly when he's going after these younger kids and then the, daughter of the sheriff or police chief.
so then we see an event happens that will be. This is such a foreshadow. It's astonishing. Bundy's driving down the road, so they have a description again of Ted and a beige Volkswagen and this girl who escaped, gave a description and a statement and all this stuff. And by the way, also, oh no, that's later. Never mind. So this cop is driving down the road and there's this beige Volkswagen ahead of him and it's at night and this fucking car can't hardly stay on the road. So he
Hmm.
pulls it over and it's Bundy. And they know that they're looking for this set of, identification things, the car and the Ted and all this stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
so they arrest him. And he gets arrested because he's a shitty driver. He wasn't drunk.
He's just a shitty
He's
driver.
just a shitty driver. He's
Damn,
shitty
Ted.
enough of a driver to get pulled over just going down a straight goddamn road.
Wow. Man, they all make mistakes, but it really sucks when it has to be that one, I would think, if I were them.
You'd
Man.
think if you had something like Ted has to hide, you would, I don't know, take
Yeah.
a little care to not get
Yeah.
pulled over for stupid shit like not being able to drive.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you would think he would be smart enough not to be one of those people that, you know, they're driving drunk on the road when they're going 10 miles under the speed limit for no reason,
Yeah.
paying extra careful attention. And you don't have to be that anal about it, just drive decent.
Yeah. Drive to not be noticed.
Right.
So
Right.
so Ted goes on trial for the attempted kidnapping of Carol, um, and he gets convicted. She's this chick. Pardon my terminology, but I mean she's 18 years old. She's a young woman, and she, bold as brass, sat up there and told the story straight up and got his ass tossed in jail. Good for her.
Oh, yeah. 3 cheers and applause on that.
And that's when police started going, there's this other Ted guy being
we're,
looked for
yeah,
over
we're
in
still.
Seattle. And so this is where the connections start to be made between Utah and Washington.
Drunk history, Ted Bundy.
Hey,
Kelly.
I'm
Hey,
not.
I'll have you know we're not drinking.
Damn it.
I'm not anyway. But
I wish I had that excuse. By the way, and I totally forgot, he also killed 3 women in Colorado
yes.
while he was living in Utah.
Now,
And
how did he end up in the Colorado prison over the Utah one? Was it just the
he was
charges?
extradited.
Okay, it was just that the charges were greater in Colorado then.
Yeah, he was in prison at Point of the Mountain in Utah, and he was extradited to Colorado to stand trial for 3 murders of young women there. And this is where Ted and I cross paths again. I'm
They only
not,
merge identities later.
Jesus Christ.
Just letting you all know.
I wish I was kidding. All right. So, where is,
Colorado.
no, I want this other one.
Now we're looking for a pick.
All right. So here's the map. Ted's standing trial in Glenwood Springs for murders in Vale and Grand Junction and somewhere else along the corridor, I-70 corridor there through the Rocky
Mm-hmm.
Mountains. Well, during his trial, I was in high school as a senior, and we went on a hike into the mountains just outside of Glenwood Springs when Ted jumped out of the window that same weekend.
Wow. Now, elaborating a bit more on that, the jail that they kept him in was not all that great.
It
And he
was
ended up jumping out of a courthouse window, second floor,
second story courthouse
law
window.
library.
He was defending himself. He was acting as his own lawyer, so the judge granted him access to the law library. And Ted practiced jump in his cell. He would climb up on the top bunk and jump off to build up his endurance for the fall.
Yep.
And he pretended to be on the phone. It was a hot day. It was springtime. Um, and so he just opened the window and jumped out and ran off.
Dang.
And
Now, did he kill the people in that hotel after?
no.
That was before. That was one of them that he was going to be charged with then in Colorado.
The young woman who was staying at the hotel at the ski
Yeah.
resort. Yeah, that was one of the ones he was charged with.
Okay.
Yeah, she was a
Making
nurse
sure.
who was from another state who was
They're on their
engaged to be
honeymoon, I
married
thought.
or engagement vacation or something like that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So he was on the lam for 3 days in the mountains, but he didn't know how to take care of himself. I mean,
Nope.
he was not a survivalist. He was not an outdoorsman. He was a city boy in the fucking Rocky Mountains, and he didn't know what the hell to do. He found some old dilapidated cabin where he slept. It had no food and nothing but the clothes on his back, and he eventually just walked back into town and got caught again.
Yep.
He managed to escape, but he wasn't very good at what happens afterwards.
Well, he managed to escape a couple times now.
he, yeah.
I get freaking Harry Houdini, man.
So he goes to prison in Colorado Springs, and he's convicted of these murders, and now I don't know if he was on death row or not at the time, but he's definitely going to be there a hell of a long time. And
Yeah.
he notices something. He notices there's this ceiling fan in his cell, and it's about 14 inches in diagonal, and or a cross or something like that. It's not very
Hmm.
big, and
Yep.
he decides that he's gonna crawl out. So he starts losing weight and working out really hard, and eating less, working out harder, and he drops a ton of weight until he can fit through that goddamn little vent, and eventually crawls out. And we don't know what happened after he got through the vent, but he got all the way out of prison, got to fucking Denver airport, took a plane to Philadelphia or Chicago, where
Chicago.
he
Then he
watched
went to University of Michigan
went to
from there.
the football game. He watched the Huskies play the Michigan team. As a football game. He
And
went to the
didn't he
game.
damn near get into a bar fight with a Michigan fan when
Yeah,
he was up there?
yeah.
Or did he get into a bar fight?
Yeah. I don't recall the details on that one.
And
Um,
whether it was narrow or actual. But
I think I think it was close, and he got away. So he obviously had stolen some credit cards and cash and stuff to support his journey, and he ended up going.
to Florida.
Yeah, he took a bus, I believe it was, down to South Carolina and Georgia, and he ended up in Florida.
Well, and there was a great degree of logic to that, too. He had said after he was eventually caught again that the reason he went down there was for the warmer climate. He knew from that Colorado experience he just can't do this, in that cold ass climate
He's
in
a
the Rocky Mountains.
yeah.
Yep.
He's not a tough boy.
No.
He's not an outdoor guy. He
No, on
wants
the
to.
one hand, he's very tenacious, but on the other hand, yeah, he's kind of being a pussy there, but, suck it up.
Yeah. So, but he doesn't waste a lot of time once he gets to Florida, and this is where things get really nasty.
Yep.
This is where he. You tell it, man.
The manual has a great paragraph on that. External stressors may alter the behavior of an offender. Precipitating factors that cause a buildup of tension may lead to an explosive, impetuous assault by a person who would normally approach the crime with planning and control. Ted Bundy is an example of this degeneration of an organized killer into a disorganized one due to external stressors. This is when he is in Florida and the Chi Omega murders, sorority. With all of his abduction rate murders previous to the Chi Omega murders, he carefully selected, stalked, and abducted his victims and used meticulous body concealment. His discomfort with the fugitive lifestyle, among other things, led to the explosive homicidal spree in which he bludgeoned random victims of opportunity. Although co-eds, they were random compared to his usual careful selection. Bundy used a weapon of opportunity, a log, obtained at the crime scene and left near another. He left their bodies openly displayed at the death scene, a marked departure from his usual attempts of body disposal. And all of these later actions describe the typical behavior of a disorganized killer, where you get into that usual dichotomy of organized, disorganized. So it's interesting that you see um, that de-evolution, if you
Yeah.
will, from external stressors at Chi Omega. And that really raised a lot of terror in that community, too. Another college, of course, Florida State, just like up there in
Well,
Washington.
not just so. Again, he murdered the girls in the sorority, and then he literally went down the road and murdered another woman.
Yes, a spree this time.
Yeah.
where you have 3 or more in that very short time frame, no cooling off period. The qualification of a spree.
Yes.
So
2 of the women at Chi Omega survived, and
2
2
of
did
them after
not.
being bludgeoned with a log.
Yeah, and just horrible. The woman down the street from FSU, Cheryl Thomas, she also survived, but was left with, she was permanently deaf and had inner ear damage that affected her equilibrium.
But yeah, it's really interesting, and it shows just how addled he must have been that he used that log and didn't bother to, strangle
Yeah.
per his usual MO. But, and that's another thing, looking at escalation, you just don't often see that, where they go backwards that much. But that's ultimately what got him caught down there in Florida.
Well,
Put on death row, and
before he got caught, though, he had that one very odd uh, divergence from his target profile, which was the young girl,
oh
uh,
yeah,
the 12-year-old girl in Lake City, which was about, what is it, about 3 weeks after the sorority girls.
the Chi Omega. Yep, it
Um,
was.
and he took her out, and yeah, he dumped her at a cabin, I think it was.
Hmm.
Um,
That just, I think, again shows just how desperate and addled he was. He sort of stayed in that disorganized headspace after all that happened.
yeah, the difference between Florida and Utah and Washington is the cops had a pretty fucking good idea who they were looking for. They
Yeah.
they knew they were after Bundy.
Oh,
Uh,
exactly. I mean, they did know, but at the same time, they didn't know that he was the killer of the Chi Omega girls. So there was some fear created from that.
yeah,
But yeah.
and again, guess how he gets caught?
Damn driving,
He
man.
can't drive for shit. In fact, his driving was so bad, the chief of police of the town where he was picked up, commented on what a crappy driver he was, and that's why he got caught. One of his patrolmen pulled him over for being a shitty driver, and guess what? It's Ted Bundy.
Should have invested in some driving school there,
God.
asshole. That's so stupid. He had to have been just, palm to the forehead with that.
Yeah, if you're so smart, why can't you stay between the fucking lines?
Yeah, essentially.
So now he's definitely in a death penalty state. And you know what's one of the things that was used to convict Bundy was a very new forensic tool that has since been discarded, interestingly enough, and that was bite impressions. That
And it rightfully should have been discarded, but go
yeah,
on.
yeah. Um, but they gave it a shot, and it was not the only evidence they had by any means, but
No,
it was significant. Um,
no, and the reason that it should have been discarded for people who don't know, and this was developed a bit later, I think. It's the Fry standard for evidence, FRY, developed through case law and through opinion, where a test like bite impressions or DNA has to meet that generally accepted rule of scientific validity.
mhm.
And the problem when you get into it with bite marks is that it's not science at all. You're literally comparing two pictures. That's art.
Yeah.
So,
And skin is just too malleable
yeah,
to be reproducible.
absolutely. It's
Um,
still just the nature of that. Good thing they're not using it anymore, but yeah, it's still a while before DNA was developed.
um, yeah. So Ted again. Well, he was assigned a lawyer by the courts, and he just, but he was also allowed to act as his own lawyer, and he just made a,
Yeah.
he just fucked it up.
Kelly, dramatic pause. Yeah.
Um,
Dun dun dun.
he was a grandstander. He loved being in the spotlight. He loved it. He loved talking to the cameras. He loved talking to the press. He thought he could just, um, oh, yes, Kelly, he was very much advised to not be his own lawyer.
Emphatically by the judge, if I remember
Yes,
correctly.
yes. But Bundy insisted, and he eventually got his lawyer fired.
He did after quite a lot of theatrics.
Yeah. Or either that or he quit. I think it was some combination. But
Yeah.
Bundy did not like to be questioned about his quote unquote strategies. Um, uh, he was always, pulling some shit or other in court. Um, and it it just, he had, you have to understand, he thought he was a brilliant lawyer, but he had, what was it, a year of law school plus a month or two.
Oh, yeah.
That was it.
And he very much was like Eileen and enjoying the press, Kelly.
Oh yeah, yeah. He loved the press, and um, he, he, he was. Uh, I don't think anybody was gonna get him acquitted.
No. I think he had to know that too. He had to know his time was up.
But
And that almost makes you wonder the way that he sabotaged it. He sabotaged his own defense.
I don't think it was deliberate. I really don't. I think he thought
Yeah.
he could beat him. I thought he had the ego to believe that he could win. Um,
You know?
and you know what was another very, very strange phenomena that was brought up at the beginning of the show, and that was the groupies.
Yeah.
The courtroom was packed with young women.
Oh, I love you, Ted.
Yeah, women who were exactly the type that he had killed.
Didn't we establish with the first Bundy show that he's actually Becky's boyfriend? I thought we did, but maybe
Maybe,
not.
maybe. And he connected up with a woman he met back in the old sexual assault task force days, who started going in, who traveled all the way down to Florida to, um, ended up being his girlfriend, ended up marrying him, ended up having a baby with him
That is where the sun
while
comes
he
in.
was in prison.
Another thing to stress there, I thought this was very interesting in watching the Bundy tapes documentary.
Yeah.
It's by Joe Berlinger, who also did the movie with Zac Efron. But Bundy was talking about during this time how he was basically high 24/7 in jail.
Really?
Yeah,
On what?
that they were getting all sorts of drugs in. That his girlfriend would smuggle like
Oh,
Valium, weed, basically anything he wanted, and she was getting it in.
well, that might explain some of his behavior in court.
Yeah, I mean it might be. But I'd have to say, I think if I were on death row and I were in his situation, I'd probably want to be high 24/7 too.
Yeah, I'd wait till after the trial, though.
Well, this is true. Probably a good idea. Well, unless you would plead a insanity or incompetence defense, where I am incapable in assisting in my own defense.
Because I'm taking drugs.
Well, you would have to, of course, conceal that part, plead craziness or what have you. Which he could have. I don't think we said this. His undergraduate training was in psychology. Ted Bundy.
Ah,
I don't think we mentioned that. That's what the actual degree he had was in.
I'm putting up the list of his victims. This is my spreadsheet that I made. Yes, the first one has the wrong year, as we established early on.
Mm.
All right.
I
So,
actually have an interesting bit here about his execution. This
okay.
is from the New York Times Book of Crime, which is literally just a bunch of their reportage from Lincoln's assassination to, I think, 2016 in one book.
Okay.
But they said in there, the headline, Bundy is put to death in Florida after admitting trail of killings. Theodore Bundy, among the most notorious killers in recent times, was electrocuted today, and about 200 people gathered outside the entrance of the Florida State Prison, cheered when they heard the news. He went quietly to his death nearly 15 years after he embarked on a trail of murder that investigators believe took the lives of 30 or more young women across the nation. Give my love to my family and friends, the former law student told his lawyer, and a minister as guards strapped him into the wooden chair in an execution chamber separated from 2 dozen official witnesses by a large glass window. He was pronounced dead at 7:16 a.m. after 2,000 volts of electricity surged through his body for 1 minute, prison officials said. Outside the prison gates, the crowd cheered and whooped when a signal came from the floodlit cell block 400 yards away where the execution took place, and Mr. Bundy was dead. A few opponents of capital punishment were lost in the crowd that had come in the pre-dawn chill of northern Florida's piney woods to applaud the death of a man whose, quote, boy next door good looks and intelligence concealed the impulses that led him to hunt down women and murder them. This is a big deal, said Carrie Harper, 26, of nearby Gainesville. Some of us have waited 11 years for this moment. 1989 when he was executed.
Yeah, it was a big deal, and it was quite the carnival outside of the prison.
Yep.
T-shirts being sold, and fireworks going off, and music being played. Um,
Yep.
People were glad to see this guy gone. A lot of people were glad to see him off the face of the earth.
Yeah, have to say I definitely agree with them, although I oppose the death penalty.
I generally do as well. This one they got right.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. There's no question they got this one right. And oddly, in a lot of ways, the electric chair can be viewed as more humane than lethal injection. But
Yeah,
that's a topic for another day.
yeah. Um, what's interesting is Bundy tried to get his execution delayed by claiming to have murdered additional women. that nobody had connected him to yet.
It's
And
kind
that
of the Henry Lee Lucas tactic
right,
with that.
right. And
So confusion.
well, tease them, say that you've got additional information, you can show where some bodies are, you can, connect up unsolved cases, um, anything to keep things going and stay alive. But
Yep.
the Florida courts didn't give a shit. They kind of figured
Nope.
we got enough and you're out of here.
Yeah, I think he kind of overplayed that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yep.
But then again, like I said, they went through this with Henry Lee Lucas too, and Otis Toole, also in Florida.
Yep. Yep.
And that's another thing with these killers. That seemed to be a favored tactic from Zodiac on to go in multiple jurisdictions
Yeah.
to sow confusion and to admit
Well,
to maybe some things he didn't do.
Lucas and Toole did. They
Oh
were
yeah,
really good at that.
consummate liars. Those two, yeah, they're the archetype of that.
Well, this guy changed a lot of things in the world um, through his, um, you know, wow. It's just hard to believe that he could just, pretty much just out of nowhere, just start murdering women. And
Yeah, it's almost like something just cracked.
yeah,
A switch was flipped, and then boom, right into it.
yeah, very strange. It's really not typical. It's
That's actually another reason that I am against capital punishment with these types. You keep them alive, you can study them.
right. Assuming they are, willing. I
Yeah,
I think his Kelly. I think his confirmed count is uh 30.
30. According to the Times bit that I just read, it was 30.
Well, yeah, yeah, something like that. It's right around there. Um, there are, yeah, there's what, two, four, five um, that were just on his say so. However,
Oh,
and
no bodies found with them.
yeah, I mean, no other connection besides his say so.
Mm.
Empress Wu still wins. Well, yeah, she was an empress. She had access to murdering a lot more people.
Yeah, we're not talking about somebody who had access to a
And then
political system to systematically kill. Apples and oranges, Kelly.
Empress Wu is still impressive, yes. All right, I think that's gonna wrap it up for Ted Bundy Redux.
We beat the hell out of Bundy, and just a little secret here, people. He didn't actually die on Old Sparky.
What?
He took over the identity of S.K. Barrett. You have been talking to the killer the whole time.
It's just I have no explanation other why Ted and I crossed paths not once but twice, and why I have crossed paths with Ridgway,
Mr.
and
Deadman, I knew it.
I can't explain it, but it's a thing.
They just switched identities. He was his doppelganger. So
Hey,
SK is Ted. Exactly. See, we knew it, and that is what the GIF was about.
An M. Night Shyamalan podcast.
The drunk history with M. Night Shyamalan and Ted Bundy. S.K. Bundy.
SK stands for serial killer.
S.K. Bundy. No
Okay.
longer Barrett, it's Bundy.
I think we've gone as far as we should go on this.
Probably.
I'm glad we redid this show. You
Me
know,
too.
it was one of the early ones that we did, and we probably weren't very good at it then.
It didn't do a damn thing with recording. But, like I said earlier, that is the technological learning curve.
Absolutely. Back your shit up.
Yep, exactly. And don't forget to join us next week for Shinrikyo,
I'm going to let you say that every time.
the death cults. It's spelt really weird. It's A-U-M. I thought it was O-M, but it's A-U-M.
The,
Shinrikyo.
the Tokyo subway terrorist attack.
Led by a blind and sadistic cult leader.
Death cults. Woohoo!
Same bat time, same bat channel.
All right.
I'm surprised it goes out there into the backwood Canadian hinterlands, Kelly.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Night.